Good Erev Shabbos. If you've ever heard of a sabbatical, that comes from this week's Parsha. Sabbatical, obviously an English rendering of Shabbat or Shabbos, is the term used for a Shemitah year. Sabbatical year is how it's usually expressed. Don't worry, this isn't a warning that you have to plan ahead for one coming up. We're actually right in the middle of the Shemitah cycle in Israel. So produce that we buy from Israel right now doesn't have that concern to it, except possibly for wine. Of course, we do have to still make sure that our Israeli produce is properly tithed. A few stores in the city do this, like Sobeys in Thornhill, Kosher City. The rest of the time, you have to either look for a kosher supervision seal or actually take the tithes yourself, which you can do. It takes about 3 minutes, and it's interesting to learn how to do it. See the COR website for a video. When we speak about a sabbatical, nowadays it means time off of work. People need to take a breather, step back from their day to day tasks, take a longer view on things, recharge their batteries, relax a little bit. A sabbatical can be a few weeks off, or it can be an entire year. That's what happens for university professors. Although nowadays there's a move toward calling it research leave, which tells you about our culture's disdain for rest and the need for people to constantly feel like they're producing work. Ours is not a world that encourages anyone, anytime, to stop and smell the roses, unless, of course, you can figure out how to monetize it by selling advertising space on the roses. But a sabbatical, not for academics or people who need to get a year-long break, a sabbatical for the land, meaning a Shemitah year, is where the land of Israel itself gets to take a rest, have a little break from producing fruits and grains and vegetables. It's the major focus of Behar, one of the two parshas we're reading this Shabbos, along with Bechukosai. When we read the two together, it'll bring us to the end, the conclusion of the book of Chumash Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. So, of course, we will stand together and say out loud, Chazak, Chazak, v'nis chazek. We wish each other strength from our continued reading and studying Torah and engaging with the new ideas and possibilities we find there. Always something new. The idea behind the Shemitah year, the sabbatical for the land, is obviously to let it rest and replenish so that it doesn't exhaust its fertility and its capacity to keep producing food for the people. That's very important, no question about it. Deeper than that, we find another theme of acknowledgement, that we're not the ones in charge, much as we would like to think that we are. Farmers in Israel actually relinquish their exclusive rights over the land that they farm for the other 6 years. The Torah says that animals can come and graze the land. Servants, neighbors, anyone who wants can come and take that which grows of its own accord. Remember, no one's working the land in the 7th year, so it's just incidental crops which grow. The Rambam, Maimonides, writes that it's a positive mitzvah to forfeit ownership over the land, the vineyard, the olive grove, the orchard, whatever it may be. Someone who locks the gates to his orchard during the sabbatical year is not doing it right. They must declare it ownerless so that anyone may come and claim the incidental growth. So what's happening here is a break for the land, for sure, and there's also a change in attitude of the farmer. Normally, he or she works the land and sells for profit, but this year, not. Apparently, the root of the Hebrew word shmita is to let go of. That means the main thing for the landowner is to get it into his head with this once every 7 years reminder that his is only a temporary stewardship. His possession of the land is not forever. This comes to the fore even more with emphasis on the other major mitzvah of Parshas Behar, the Jubilee or the Yovel year. The Shemitah year is once every 7 years, and the Jubilee is after every 7 sets of 7. So that's 49, I can do that math. So it's the 50th year of a cycle. And again, we're only talking about the land of Israel here. While we have managed to keep track of the Shemitah years in 2,000 years of exile, somehow or other, we lost track of the Jubilee years. So we'll just have to wait for resolution on that one. In the Jubilee year, there's also a stopping of farming and agriculture. So the 49th and 50th years of that cycle, the land gets a double rest, 2 years. In addition, we sound the shofar on Yom Kippur to announce that it is a Jubilee year and encourage people to do tshuva. And wait, there's more. Ancestral lands also revert to their original owners. So if someone sold land to another person or another party, that sale is valid until the Jubilee year, until the Yovel, and then it goes back to the original tribal owners who inherited it at the time of Joshua's leading us all into Israel. It's hard to become a real estate mogul when there's a reset on ownership every half century and land reverts to the original owners. No empire building there. And still more, indentured servants, okay, slaves as they're often translated, all go free on the Jubilee year. But wait, you say, didn't we say back in Parshas Mishpatim that indentured servants go free at the Shemitah year, every 7 years? Good memory. We did say that at the outset of Mishpatim back in Exodus chapter 21. And then again, the following verse there explains that if a servant decides at the time of his freedom that he really likes the work and he'd rather stay on as a servant further, look, it's 3 squares a day, a roof over your head, holidays off, and you never have to put a resume together. He has that option. His ear is pierced, and he keeps the job until the Jubilee year when everyone goes free. Now, speaking of ears, listen to what the Akedas Yitzchak, the great Spanish commentator Rabbi Yitzchak Arama from the 1400s, has to say. He writes this: the purpose of the sabbatical year is to open our ears and awaken our hearts by establishing for us great and awesome markers of time. How easily, he says, are our eyes blinded by the flattery and influencers of this world, of its futilities and falsehoods, which appear to be true, which cause us to sell our own souls into eternal servitude of the earth, as if we were senseless mules. Sounds like they had social media in the 1400s. The Akeda continues, in order to liberate us from the self-imposed prison of desire that binds us in its powerful embrace to the vanities of the hour, God has illuminated for us a clear means of marking our time in this world, our days or weeks, our years that we cannot overlook except through willful blindness. The work of 6 days and the stopping work on the seventh is true testimony that the world was purposefully brought into being by a creator. Acknowledging that fact is the necessary starting point for all spiritual development. What Rabbi Yitzchak Arama is saying is that we note the punctuation of time by the day, the week, the month, the year, the 7 year cycle, and the 50-year cycle. And that develops in us a sense that we are not the owners and masters of all we survey, although it's easy to think that we are. It's all here because of the Creator. We are invited to become partners in creation through our recognizing that and our letting go. For example, letting go of work on the seventh day, letting go of land on the seventh year. 7 is the basic unit of cyclical time, Shabbat every 7 days, a sabbatical year every 7 years, a cycle of sabbaticals every 7 sevens, 49 years, and the Jubilee following on the 50th year. That is next level. Everyone experiences a week. You have to have a Shabbos even before a baby boy's bris on the 8th day. Sabbatical year is something that we are periodically aware of, even if we live outside of the land of Israel. Of course, if we lived in Israel, we would be that much more cognizant of what's going on around us and much more mindful of this interval in time. But a Yovel, a Jubilee year, it's something else. Most people would experience a Jubilee once in a lifetime. A rare person would be alive for 2 Jubilees. And it's mathematically possible, but highly unlikely, for a person to be born in or just before a Jubilee year and then live to 101 or 102 to see a second Jubilee and a third. So let's say it's about 1 Jubilee per person on average. What might this be suggesting to us? The interval of a Yovel, 50-year span, is really a time frame in which a person might make their mark on the world. 50 is a landmark age. Most of us have already got there already, or as they say, pushing 50 from the other side. 50 years is enough for an entire nation to lose sight of its values and goals, argues Rav Meir Tzvi Gruzman from Israel. 50 years, a nation could unravel and lose its faith, lose its sense of mission, and lose the sense of social and religious structures that keep a people together. In that interval of time, there's almost sure to be times of trouble and dangers and times of contentment and tranquility. Either of those and everything in between can be an opportunity for growth or an opportunity for decline. How much more so for the individual person? Yovel, Jubilee, is an all encompassing reset. As we've seen from what happens at the Jubilee, all the servants go free, the land goes back to its original holders. And Yovel is also the Hebrew name Yuval, which means a stream, like a stream of water, from a verse in Jeremiah, Yirmiyah Hanavi, chapter 17, which talks about a tree that sends its roots out toward a stream. V'haya ka'etz shasul al mayim, v'al yuval yishalach sharashav. For those whose roots run deep and whose trunk is solid, maybe a little bit thicker than it was a few rings ago, it's a potential moment of reset and repositioning, deciding how best to make the most of the next chapters of our lives. Because the end of that verse, the prophet says that the tree with solid roots near a stream will not worry in a year of drought and will not stop producing fruit. Shnas betzores lo yidag v'lo hamish me'asois peri. No matter what the age says on our driver's license, we know that we're alive and well if we are continuing to grow, to seek more insight, to daven better, to improve ourselves in some way or other, to find new ways, to be kind to each other. That's really the drive behind this cycle of working and letting go of work, of possessing, letting go of possession, of constantly resetting to figure out where we are and where we want to go from here. Akedas Yitzhak emphasizes that there's a different quality about the land of Israel as contrasted with everywhere else. He writes, the purpose of the gift of the land of Israel is not in order that we may devote our labors to it for the sake of extracting its riches and wealth, thus becoming its servants in the process. That's the intention of all other nations in their respective lands. The purpose is rather that we should search for spiritual perfection in accordance with the will of the Creator. The land provides the necessary sustenance for this endeavor to be pursued. In order to reinforce this essential truth, the Torah commands that the earth be worked for 6 years and relinquished during the seventh. This is to clearly indicate that not through the exercise of material acquisition is the purpose of life realized, but rather through spiritual growth and perfection. So please God, may this Shabbos of strength, Shabbat Chazak, give us all the courage and insight to renew ourselves and our source of strength, and in relinquishing, find that we are much more strongly connected and bonded. Good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom, Chodesh Tov. This Shabbos in Shul, we will bless the new month of Sivan, which begins on Wednesday. The reappearance of the moon in Jerusalem, the eternal and undivided capital of Israel, will take place on Tuesday morning at 9:14 and 3 parts. Die Moiled wird sein Donnerstag in der Früh, 14 Minuten nach 9 Zeger mit 3 Chalakim. Rosh Chodesh wird sein Mittwoch. A good Shabbos, a good Chodesh.